Hello. I want to talk about the fairly recent phenomenon of people online talking about using deep heat for self-defense. There's not a lot that really gets to me in life, but that bothers me because it's such a bad idea for your safety and for the fact that it might put you into more danger. But I wish people wouldn't do it. They're often smug and they'll say to each other, I see this a lot on X, people will say, oh well, don't forget to carry a can of deep heat in your bag for your nudge nudge, wink wink, bad back. And I've said to some people, and I've seen other people doing it, saying bad idea, don't do that, there's a lot of better things to do and you might put yourself in danger. They will not listen, they do not listen to you. Just like, as I have known in the past, I've mentioned in the past, I've known young ladies who think if they get into some sort of trouble, just kick him in the balls. And they really think it's that easy. They think that it will keep them safe in some pretty dodgy situations, and that means they're more likely to put themselves into violent situations, dangerous places, late at night, because they think they're safe. I mentioned before, I knew one girl who she thought she was practically invincible. She was only in her 20s at the time. There's a lot of bad information out there, a lot of bad information on videos online about self-defense. They have strange things where you might have a video where somebody comes and grabs a woman's bag and then she'll just give a light kick to his shin or his knee and he'll collapse halfway to the ground, and then she'll just do a gentle knee and he's on the ground and that's it. Well, if you think that's how it works in real life, you're in a lot of trouble. Just as people who watch a lot of action movies, if they think that's how combat works in real life, they might get themselves into some trouble. You get schools that make a lot of money out of teaching self-defense, and sometimes you're not talking about £10 a week to go once and learn. You're talking about spending £200-300 for a 12-week course, things like that. And it's such a rip-off, and I bet a lot of the people involved, probably personal trainers who don't know much about combat, it's no surprise, no secret, you can get people who have black belts in modern martial arts who have never had a fight in their life. You also get people who have black belts in martial arts who are very effective combatants. Not usually if it's just one martial art they're training though. Right, that's an introduction. Let's get into the subject a bit. It's pretty cold out here, and because I've had to zoom the camera in under a shelter, if I try to keep warm as I'm going, then you won't really be able to see me. So I'm going to try to get it out of the way as quickly as possible. First thing, this is obvious. You don't have to know anything about self-defense to understand this. All you have to do is to have been a child at some point or another in a swimming pool with another child. What happens when somebody splashes your eyes? You close them very quickly. It's difficult not to close them, as you'll know if you ever try to give yourselves eye drops or something like that. And the instinct to do this, it's so quick. How much of that deep heat spray, which by the way is not formulated to penetrate, to travel into a small area, into a small target in the spray mechanism, how much of that do you think you're going to get into their eyes before they close them? Very, very little. They might look away. If you start rummaging around in your bag, they're going to notice, they're going to see you get something out. They might think it's pepper spray or mace or something like that, and then they might move away. They might just make sure you never get far enough to actually spray it at them. But the chances of you doing something significant to them without closing their eyes, very remote. I was a little bit tempted to test this and just have a spray of something, perhaps with the slightest drop of something like lemon juice in it, which wouldn't do any harm. I mean a very small amount, and of course sterile, very clean water. But you don't need to. I don't need to. You can do it yourself if you get a spray bottle, either of something that's meant to go in your eye, or just a spray bottle, but rinse it out very well, boil some water, let it cool down, then try it. And you spray it. If you try to keep your eyes open, it'd be really, really difficult, and you will involuntarily close them. It's quite cold today. Involuntarily close them, whether you really want to or not. So effective delivery is very, very unlikely. Next thing you've got is escalation, which will be immediate. If you're being attacked by somebody, then there's probably something wrong with them. They're disturbed, they're a criminal, perhaps they're intoxicated, perhaps they're insane. It doesn't mean you can't make it worse. I don't care about them, I care about the person who's trying to defend themselves. And if you've got somebody who especially is a little bit disturbed, a little bit unable to judge what's the right thing to do and the wrong thing to do, and you start spraying things in their eyes, that's not going to do very much to them, but it will irritate them, perhaps it will just shock them. Now you're adding more adrenaline to it, and there might not be a lot already, depending on the circumstances. If you've got somebody who comes towards you who is a raving lunatic, waving their arms around, screaming, salivating, then actually you're probably not going to make it much worse with a spray, but I don't think that happens that often. If you've got somebody who has sinister intent, I live in Britain, of course, and stabbings are all too common, and a lot of the time it's not just people who've got caught up in something, it's somebody really unpleasant, perhaps with terrorist ideals or something else, and they've gone out and they plan to hurt as many people as possible. They might be calculating, and it's probably not likely that you put yourself in much more danger if you spray them, unless they weren't actually aiming for you. And we've had things in the train carriage, we've had things in public buildings, but it's definitely not going to help, and it will definitely make you a target if you weren't a target. So there's escalation. If you already had a dangerous maniac, now they're an angry dangerous maniac, angry with you, and you will have, as I said, increased adrenaline. It definitely won't stop them, even if it's sore. You have to do quite a lot to somebody to make them stop. We see it all the time in combat sports. If a person who is still fighting, going on quite well, if they were to stop, if you were just to pull them out of that situation, perhaps there was an emergency or something like that, because fights aren't stopped that quickly unless somebody's really hurt, and sit them down for a minute and they were to think about how they feel and the adrenaline starts to go, they'll probably be in a lot more pain than they are while they're in there, and they would be distracted. But when you're in a rage, in a situation, then it takes quite a bit. It takes a lot to stop somebody, even if the pain would be enough under other circumstances to make them think, I don't want any more of that. You're not going to do it with fairly mild skin medicine that's supposed to do a little bit to stop pain, to relieve you from discomfort. Additionally, if there's any element of surprise you might have had, lots of things you could talk about, small self-defense moves, just to give you a second to get away, wouldn't help if you're in a crowded train. If you were going to perhaps, and I'm not saying this is the right thing to do, it's in a horrible situation and a lot of it takes assessment of the situation, analysis of what your options are. If you were going to hand them your bag, because it's always better to lose your bag than to be injured, and then turn and run, you've ruined that by trying to take the spray out. That could have been a possibility before. Sometimes they just want your phone. Shouldn't give anyone your phone. These dirty scumbags shouldn't be allowed to get away with anything, but it's not worth danger to you. It's not worth your life. I've been stabbed once. I was very, very lucky. Stabbed just about here, loads and loads of blood. But it didn't do very much damage to me. It was only mentioned in passing, but the doctors and nurses did say, yes, you were lucky. It could have been in a much more dangerous place than that. I didn't face somebody who was enough of a lunatic to start stabbing multiple times, slashing multiple times. If I had just had a slice in the face, it could have changed my life. Not that anybody, not that I'm ever going to make money off of good looks anyway, but it could have made things very different. Now, there's a fair old wind out here today. So you haven't done enough harm to them to stop them coming. If they've got a knife, if they were just going to attack fairly mildly, now they might just start slashing, might start stabbing. If they were intent on killing somebody anyway, they might have done that, but they might not, because a lot of the time you get people who are stabbed and they do survive. And if you have made yourself more of a target by inflicting a little bit of discomfort on them, drawing the attention to you, then you might receive more wounds, so you won't survive. There's nothing ideal about any of these situations. I'm not saying let yourself get stabbed and you'll be okay, not it at all, but don't do something that won't help you very much, that is very probably going to make it worse. If you have somebody who's insane, who's a maniac, who's trying to hurt you, you don't often deter a maniac with slightly itchy eyes. Not likely to happen. I would go as far as to say that Anybody who's got something worse than shampoo in their eyes has probably experienced the kind of pain that you'd have from deep heat. If you get some in, and it won't be a lot, it's not meant to be delivered in that way. If it's windy, incidentally, as it's windy now, it's not going to get near them. If you've got a moving train carriage and you've got the air moving through the carriages, as it often does with open windows, that's going to stop it. The chances of you doing anything effective with it are so remote, it's not worth the small risk of carrying it. So we have wind, could stop it. It could be misdirected because you're in a panic, and it's not meant to focus into an area. It's meant to be sprayed like this over an area and then saturate it somewhat and then have the effect. You could even just take a bit of the deep heat and you could experiment. I'm not suggesting anyone spray anything like that in their eyes, because then it would make me look bad if they did hurt themselves very much, and you could have scratches, you could have various conditions that make it worse than normal. The person attacking you on the train may not have those. You could spray some of it on a fairly sensitive area, see how much you feel, then see how much you feel if you just spray, perhaps use the other wrist, spray it for a second. That's all you're going to get, a fraction of a second in their eyes. It's not going to do much, and that can allow you to gauge how ineffective it will be without actually taking any risk yourself. So we have wind stopping it, we have misdirection. It's too weak, it's not concentrated, it's not suitable for that sort of thing. And then there are the legal matters. I don't really think it's of great importance. I'm just going to mention it in passing. I don't think if you're confronted by somebody who has a knife or who is a dangerous maniac or who is intent on something else, perhaps rape, that you should have to care about the law, although later on you might have to. It's not likely that, it's for my back pain. It's going to stand up if something happens. If you defend yourself against somebody and you get away, you'd like to think that nobody's going to ask any questions. It doesn't always go that way, does it? It doesn't always go that way with self-defense. It doesn't always go that way when somebody's a victim and to us it seems obvious who was in the wrong. The law doesn't see it that way. The law argues both sides, and you might find yourself being pushed, well, why were you carrying it? Have you seen a doctor about this condition? Is there any evidence that you have this condition? I don't have, as some of my friends who watch my videos will know, I don't have a lot of faith or confidence in the legal system, the police force or lawyers. I would like to think that they wouldn't try to prosecute somebody who has just sprayed a potential attacker, assuming it's obvious they were an attacker. But who knows? I would not count on it these days. People get away with things they shouldn't get away with, and people are prosecuted for things they probably, by a lot of moral assessments, should not be prosecuted for. So what do you do then? There is one particular weapon that women in particular will have with them, and I'm not going to recommend it to you, and I'm not going to say anyone should use it to hit anyone else with. I just want to make the point that women have a far better excuse to have this item on them if they really want something in their bag that may work as a deterrent. And that's all I want to say. This is how careful I want to be. I'll say no more than they wouldn't necessarily have to carry it in the bag. They might even be on their feet and they might have more than one of this item on them, and women do go out with more than one of this item on them often, especially if they're going out to clubs or something like that, and that might be a better option, but that's enough of that. What's really sensible, of course, is, I know it's very boring, is situational awareness. You'll always be aware. You don't go to dangerous places on your own. You don't visit dangerous places late at night. Think about your reasoning. If your reasoning is, well, my friends go on a different train and I'll just have to walk from this station to the club or to the pub or to the cinema or the restaurant, and I only go through a couple of streets that are quiet, then you'll have to inconvenience yourself and do it differently. And it's so important. I'd like to think that not many in 2026 groups of young women will allow themselves to be on the streets of a busy city alone. It's wrong, it shouldn't be that way, but carrying a can of deep heat spray in your handbag isn't going to change the way things are, no matter how wrong they are. It's just going to put you in more danger. Your mind should always be on escape, and this applies to all situations, really. I've talked about the dangers of trying to employ self-defense before, about trying to avoid confrontations and combat. It seems wrong, really. Almost every man on earth will feel bad about it. You don't want to walk away when somebody's threatening you. You want to show you can stand your ground. We don't live in a world that allows that. because there's so much chance of you getting in trouble even if you do very successfully defend yourself. Do more to disrupt your life than bruised ego. So your mind must be on getting away. And there are things you can think about. Maybe I'll make another video where I just summarise a few easy to do self-defence things. Kicking between the legs isn't going to do very much. You'd be better if you're well positioned to do it, to just poke somebody right here in the throat, hard as you can. It's not going to stop them. Again, it's not. I've done this with friends. I've done this a lot. First started doing it when I was actually training in Kung Fu for a while. It was the only time that I've been training the martial arts where they were talking about self-defense rather than combat, except for some things with kata and karate, but that was quite a long time ago for me. Most of my training is in Muay Thai, which is purely for hurting somebody that you're supposed to be fighting in a ring. That's what it's designed for. Doesn't mean it's no good for anything else, but that's what it's really for. But anyway, in some of these classes, they talked about things like that. Talked about things like somebody's got their hands around here, which are quite possible, just going like this, getting up. You need to be strong for that. You need to be, if not stronger than them, because leverage will be to your advantage, you need to be strong enough. So if you happen to be a 7-stone woman who's not very physically capable, then all you should be trying to do is get out of there. Even then, perhaps because you're so small, if you were to do that, you might just shock them enough that it gives you an advantage. I probably would say you're better off with a, here's my bag, they're looking at the bag, get out of there. I know I'm assuming ideal circumstances here. I'm not assuming being on a train carriage. If you were a woman on a train carriage and you're being attacked, if there's somebody there with a knife, will I be in trouble for this? From groups to do with feminism, hide behind a man. And if there's a man who won't let you do that, it's a shame. It's a real shame. I'm not suggesting everybody should be out there willing to sacrifice themselves for somebody else, but I'd like to think still, I hope so in this day and age, that people will be saying, get behind me. You can't make that happen perhaps, but assist, get behind them quick, go to the end of the carriage. Must say at this point, the chances of you being in a situation like this are so remote, it won't happen. It happens to people, of course it does happen, it happens to very few people. But again, the point is really, primarily, forget about using deep heat for self-defense. You can develop useful physical skills, as I've already just mentioned. This just means knowing how to apply some strength in your arms, using both of them. Don't have them outside a certain point. You might want your elbows anchored, depending on the kind of movement. It might help you just to know that you want your arms inside and above theirs on the shoulder, so they're not so active. Not going to do much if somebody's got a knife. If somebody's got a knife, you don't want to be that close to begin with. What I'm saying though, there are some physical skills beyond somebody coming and grabbing your handbag and you pulling in a kick and then kneeing him somewhere and then doing an elbow and him falling and rolling about on the floor as if he's injured. That's not going to happen really. But there's a few things you can do that might give you a few seconds to get out of there. And maybe I should look at that in the future. Unfortunately, I have this discussion when I talk to female friends of mine online and some male friends. I was talking a little while ago to somebody who had a very light foldable walking stick and he thought he was going to use it to defeat people. I myself had an oak walking stick not long ago and I thought I might make a video about it, and I hit this bag with it a couple of times and it broke, and that was solid wood, a lightweight folding walking stick, not going to do very much at all. And just like with the spray can, it's wasting time. It's wasting your element of surprise you might have to take action that is effective. So we have making sure you don't get into bad situations as far as you can, and there's a lot you can do to avoid that. I know somebody who talks a lot about self-defense, and his view is, why the hell are you drinking in pubs where people might be violent? I know the other side. I used to live in pubs until 20 years ago. I used to use them a fair bit till about 10 years ago. I know that you sometimes want to be in places like that. You want to be around your friends and you want to feel that you're in a social hub. But now I find it hard to see. I do really. I spent a lot of my time around other people who are interested in the heavy metal music, and you go into these places under so little trouble. Only really do you get trouble at these sort of things when the staff are there and they're undesirable people who have been employed to do something they shouldn't be employed to do. I've seen that before, and that was well known at some campsites where there were festivals. Certainly getting off topic a little bit. Keep out of bad places. I'm not trying to tell you don't go to pubs, but choose them carefully, and choose the areas carefully, and look carefully at how you're going to get back and forth and how vulnerable you'll be under those circumstances. There are some physical skills you can develop, breaking holds, shocking attacks to enable you to escape. And if for some reason, and this is a joke, don't anybody think I'm recommending it now, but if you were to find yourself in a dangerous situation and you had no choice but to take action, and you've got a can of deep heat with you, you'd be far, far better trying to jab them with it, and that would be almost useless, but it'd be better than spraying them with it. You're probably better stepping back and trying to throw it at them so it hits them on the nose and see if they blink, and then maybe you can make your escape. But spraying it in their eyes, it's not going to do good. And worst thing of all is that people have confidence. I've seen people saying, one was after a stabbing on a train, isn't this a terrible thing? At one point, you could easily think about violent incidents involving a lot of victims, and you could say, oh, well, one happened last April, one happened last December. You know what I'm going to say, don't you? Every week? No, more often than that. I saw BBC News earlier, and there was a violent situation in England. And this sounds terrible, but I'm full of my capacity to read about them and understand, because I'm starting to mix them up. Subject for another day. Be careful out there. Be really careful. Planning is the most important thing, and next to that is having people with you at all times. And that's it then. I really hope people will begin to learn from this. What am I talking about? People don't like learning. They don't like being told they're wrong about something. There's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to self-defense. I wanted to make this video because it's something I see again and again, and I've seen studies talking about it, I've seen websites, maybe I've missed them, but I don't think there's many videos talking about it. That's it then. I need to get inside now. I am rescheduling my exercise for today because it's quite late and we lost an hour, so I'm going to mess up my schedule for this week and just have a quick session here and then get inside and have some dinner. My name's Mark, thanks for watching. See you next time. Cheers.